This is Joe Biden, the President of the United States. Recently, in the middle of budget negotiations, to prevent the US from defaulting on its debt, Biden decided that it was more important to head to Japan to cosplay as a world leader at the G7. First, he toured the Itsukushima Shrine in Hiroshima, where he stumbled down some stairs. Again. Then he called the Prime Minister of Japan, Mr. President.
Well, Mr. President, it's wonderful to see you again.
Then Biden met with his boss, Volodymyr Zelensky, and then went to Marine Corps Air Station Iwakuni, where he told Marines about his son, Bo.
My son was a major in the U.S. Army. Lost him in Iraq.
And no, he didn't. Bo Biden died from glioblastoma in 2015, almost 6 years after his last deployment in Iraq in 2009. And that wasn't the first time Biden has made this mistake.
Inflation is a worldwide problem right now because of a war in Iraq and the impact on oil and what Russia's doing. The war in Ukraine. And thinking of Iraq because that's where my son died. Just imagine, I mean it sincerely. I say this as a father of a man who won the Bronze Star, the Conspicuous Service Medal, and lost his life in Iraq.
Anyway, to wrap up this very important trip, Biden held a press conference where he again referred to the Japanese Prime Minister as president.
And I also want to thank President Kishida for his outstanding, it's not hyperbole, his outstanding leadership of the G7 this year.
And then he did it a third time.
Some of you were with me on my first trip here, when I came to see President Kishida's predecessor.
And then he got the president of South Korea's name wrong.
I've spoken at length with President Moon of South Korea.
And Biden getting everyone's name wrong is par for the course. In fact, I've made several videos on the subject. Link to a playlist is in the description. But with that said, f***ing up everyone's name is minor compared to the rest of the press conference.
You know, in my private meeting with President Zelensky after the G7 meeting.
Daddy Zelensky.
The meetings I've had with my fellow G7 leaders have left us more united, more resolved, and more determined to set up for the greater progress in the months ahead.
What?
Months ahead.
Next, Biden spoke about America's strained relationship with China and Biden's other boss, President Xi Jinping.
And then this silly balloon that was carrying 2 freight cars worth of spine equipment was flying over the United States, and it got shot down, and everything changed in terms of talking to one another.
As a reminder, that silly Chinese spy balloon gathered intelligence and electronic signals from nuclear weapon systems and base personnel, and it was allowed to traverse the entire continental United States. But we're dealing with Joe Biden, so no one should be surprised at his flippant attitude.
Silly balloon.
Next, Biden spoke about the Quad, which is an alliance between Japan, Australia, India, and the United States, and was established to counter China militarily and diplomatically in the Indo-Pacific region.
I bet you, maybe some of you thought it, but I doubt many people in this audience or any other audience would have said that 2 years after being elected, I'd be able to convince India, Australia, Japan, and the United States to form an organization called the Quad to maintain stability in the Indian Ocean and the South China Sea.
But that's a lie, because the current iteration of the Quad was established in 2017 under President Trump, not President Biden. But then again, maybe it's not a lie. Maybe Joe Biden legitimately thinks that he formed the Quad. And if that's the case, I have 5 words. Invoke the 25th Amendment. Then Biden started talking about the budget negotiations between the White House and the House Republicans. Well, at least he tried to.
And there's a lot of other, for example, the idea that we're, in terms of taxes, that they refuse to, for example, I was able to balance the budget and pass everything from the global warming bill. Anyway.
81 million votes, guys. 81 million votes.
And so, guess what? We not only balanced the budget, we were able to reduce the deficit by $1.7 billion.
So Biden is claiming that he balanced the budget, but at the same time, he's claiming that he cut the deficit by $1.7 billion, which is also not true. Wow, Joe Biden lying. I know you're shocked. But just so that we're all on the same page, let me explain what a deficit is. Let's say that your household budget is $1,000, but you only have $800 to pay for it. That means you have a deficit of $200. So in 2020, the federal government spent $6.6 trillion. This was largely due to COVID spending. And since much of the nation was shut down, the government only brought in $3.4 trillion in revenue, which means there was a deficit of $3.1 trillion. In 2022, the federal government spent $6.3 trillion, but only brought in $4.9 trillion, which means there was a deficit of $1.4 trillion. So Biden is getting his figure by comparing the deficit in 2020 with the deficit in 2022, and the difference is $1.7 trillion.
We not only balanced the budget, we were able to reduce the deficit.
First, if you have a budget deficit, that means that you don't have a balanced budget. He's so full of it. Second, as you can see, Biden and the Democrats didn't really cut spending. The reason that the deficit was smaller than in 2020 is because the federal government brought in more revenue in 2022. But Biden's gonna gaslight Americans anyway.
And I love the Republicans talking about big spending Democrats. We're going to keep working to keep the federal deficit low. We cut the deficit in 2 years by $1 trillion, $700 billion, more than ever in all of American history.
So Biden is working to keep the deficit low by spending almost as much as Trump did, and then say that it's the Republicans' fault. Makes sense to me. What's your problem?
Oh, I don't want to hear from Republicans calling Democrats big spenders. We're the ones bringing down the deficit. They're the ones that blew it up.
He's blaming 2020 spending on Republicans, knowing full well that the trillions of dollars in spending under Trump was overwhelmingly bipartisan. Not to mention that the House was under Democrat control, which means more Democrats voted for it. And yet, even though Biden has been called out on it over and over and over again, and was even given a bottomless Pinocchio rating by the Washington Post, Biden still insists on repeating this bullshit because he thinks you're stupid.
I was able to cut by $1.7 billion in the first 2 years the deficit that we were accumulating.
Remember when we had a president who didn't routinely confuse billion and trillion and look like a complete weakling on the world stage? But hey, at least the mean tweets stopped, right? Then Biden tried to defend the Democrats, creating 87,000 IRS agent positions that the Republicans want to eliminate.
The fact that we've provided for the number, we got a lot of input from serious economists and former administration officials in both parties that we need more people who are qualified to be able to look at the tax returns of the 1,000 billionaires in America. Very complicated stuff.
So we need 87,000 new IRS agents to look at the tax returns of 1,000 billionaires? Right.
And because I was able to say to it that the 55 corporations in America that made $400 billion, or $400 billion, that they pay zero in tax. Zero.
40 billion, 400 million, same difference. So at one point, Biden decides that he wants to have the option to walk around the stage like it's a town hall or something, and picks up a handheld microphone. And this is not great for a couple reasons. One, it's because when he walks away from the podium, he also leaves behind his notes. Notes that he clearly needs in order to function.
We did discuss privately with Zelensky. I did discuss with Zelensky let me put it this way. The things that have already been passed, the 5 big initiatives that I've already passed in terms of infrastructure, the Affordable Care Act, et cetera. And initially they started off, they're going to cut Medicare and Medicaid. I said, whoa, no, I mean not Medicaid, Social Security and Medicare. They said, no, 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 no.
The other reason Biden shouldn't be allowed to use a handheld mic is just watch this and see for yourself.
In China, he will not lift sanctions on China's defense minister because Lloyd Austin is trying to meet with him in his current.
That's right. Biden's labored breathing is amplified and makes him look even weaker than he already is.
Yes and no. And so, Australia, so far, it's hard to make up. It's hard to make up. What do you think? Anyway, so that's the context.
And if you think that's pathetic, check out Biden's whimpering.
So, and my initially, let me put it this way. When the speaker and
on that sad and sorry note, that's it for now. Follow me on Twitter at Don't Walk Run. Be sure that you're still subscribed to the channel. And as always, thanks for tuning in, and I hope to see you next time. If there is next time.